comes in, which of those accounts are the right types of accounts? And that's the first big problem that we tend to see is the sales teams that are processing leads, what they should be doing is qualifying the account. Instead, what they're doing is they're qualifying the contact, not the account. And oh, by the way, senior executives, when senior executives are researching new products and services, do they tend to research them themselves? Absolutely not. What tends to happen is they tend to go and send their, their direct reports or even interns, low-level people in the organization to go research. And again, most sales professionals, when they receive, and by the way, I think it looks like we're back up here, but when they receive those leads, they're just literally treating them all the same way rather than saying, hey, look, we shouldn't even be talking to this account at all. This account isn't worthwhile at all. We should simply be identifying a new contact within that existing account. Does that make sense, Mark?
It does, absolutely. So, okay, great. So you've now gone.
Leads are really clues. Leads are really clues for where the opportunity might lie in the first place. And again, most sales organizations don't think of it that way. They think of it from the standpoint of process the lead. The lead is not the person, the lead is the account. They look at it as the lead is the account.
Awesome. So we've gone through a series of initial best practices. Is there anything else that you want to add to best practices, or can we dive into some specific examples of maybe organizations that you've worked with in the past?
Well, let's stop. Actually, there are a couple of other practices I want to highlight here. Actually, Kristen, if you can go back. I was focused kind of on the earlier ones, but go back another slide on the Prezi. Go back another slide on the Prezi. I want to just quickly go through these in literally 5 minutes to give everyone listening some things they can walk away with. The interesting thing about this top of the funnel when you study it is stop selling at the top of the funnel. What people tend to do at the top of the funnel is they learn everything about their products and services. So what do? They just spew it at the lead or the prospect that they're talking to. And you can't sell at the top of the funnel. Next slide there, Kristen. Now, this comes to the idea and the notion of quantity versus quality at the top of the funnel. And how should a salesperson who's the recipient of a marketing lead treat those marketing leads? You can't treat them all the same way. There are generally just too darn many. There are instances where it makes a ton of sense to do research. So once you've identified the right contact at the right account, research becomes paramount, very important. If you listen to organizations like SiriusDecisions, Forrester, Gartner, all those sorts of companies, they say the same thing. When they survey buyers are frustrated that sellers don't know they don't understand their business. Right? They say, sellers, you know your product and service is great, but you don't get my business. And research is a way around that. But how do you do research in a very efficient and effective way? Next slide, Kristen. Another thing you tend to see with salespeople at the top of the funnel is the leads that are being produced by marketing. Could be inquiries, could be MQLs. I don't care if it's a white paper download. I don't care if they're reading the microsite that Strategic Communications is putting forth and interacting with the post there. I don't care if it's an event. I don't care what it is. Those buyers are in different stages of their buying process as a general rule of thumb. Some of them are very, very early on where they're just kicking tires, right? It's business as usual in their organization, and they're just consuming your content, which doesn't necessarily mean there's any active buying cycle underway. Now, some of them might be further on in their buying process where they're just trying to figure out, should we make a change? Does it even make sense for us to do something here? Some of them might be further still where they're evaluating options, or further still where they've evaluated options, and then they hit your website to gather more information that they can add to column C on their spreadsheet, which essentially makes you column fodder, right? Because all those people have already decided which vendor they're going to go with. The vendor that shapes their buying vision wins a disproportionate amount of those deals. We know that, but your salespeople aren't able to recognize that. So the next tip I would just say for you is, how adept is your sales force at identifying where that buyer is in that decision-making process? And once they do, how adept are they at listening? Because the reality is, again, sit with your sales team. If you're a marketer listening on this call, sit with your sales team. What you're going to hear is the sales people are very good at asking questions. They're not particularly good at listening, nor do they even know what the science of active listening is. And the interesting thing about active listening is as much about what you don't say as about what you say. And people don't realize that. People don't realize that there is actually a science to listening and asking questions. Next slide, Kristen. What you'll hear, again, if you're sitting with that headset splitter, listening to your reps calling on your marketing leads or emailing those marketing leads, is you're gonna see them and hear them spewing information about your products and services, and it's not their fault. But again, do buyers at this stage of the process, do they want a product pitch? Is that what they signed up for? Heck no. Absolutely not what they signed up for. Instead, you need to have a way of talking not about your product messaging, but rather talking about the topics and the trends and the things that are happening in the industry. So people are very adept at what's going on in the industry right now. It's critically important that you fix your enablement program so that the buyer is at the driver's seat and you have the buyer in mind, as opposed to just teaching them all of the details and even frankly even the benefits of the product. People who are not in the buying process don't care about the benefits of the product, nor do they care about your differentiators if they're not important. If those differentiators are not important to the buyer, that doesn't matter to them. So you got to fix that product messaging and think of it differently. Next slide. Which takes us to this whole concept of asking questions. Because again, because salespeople don't know what to say, they don't know how to start a conversation. We refer to it as the unexpected sales call. Because they don't know how to start that unexpected sales call, as a result, they end up interrogating the prospect, which is the worst possible thing you can do, is interrogate the prospect. Don't interrogate the prospect. Giving your sales organization, sales development, or maybe your leads go to your account executives, whoever it is, giving them a list of questions to ask leads to the unintended consequence of the people literally asking the questions and not listening along the way. And it feels like an interrogation. And Mark, you've experienced this, right? Like your card will be the card in the fishbowl at the trade show, and then afterwards you get a call from sales reps that are asking you, to tell you more about your business and how much need do you have for internet security, and you're going, you don't even understand what you're talking about. Like you have no hypothesis or no grounding in what I'm trying to do or have done any sort of pre-call research, and as a result, you're literally asking me BANT. I've had sales reps who have called me and said, Steve, do you have a budget for ERP in the next 2 years? It's like, huh? What?
Right.
Do you have authority to buy the ERP system of your dreams? Are you asking me BANT? They're literally asking me BANT. So we have to avoid interrogating them. Next slide, Kristen. And what's happening, I think this is the final point, is what's happening is in many cases what your salespeople probably think are the best leads that you're giving them, the ones that are saying, give me information on your products and services, give me pricing immediately, I need a proposal tomorrow. All those people have already made their decision, and you're just simply getting shopped along the way. And you're the one who ends up being column C while the other vendor is column A, and some other poor vendor schlep is column B. The vendor A is the one that shaped their buying vision. They're the one that's going to win that deal. They form their criteria. You're just simply getting shopped at the end of that. And again, it goes back to the ability of the sales force to identify and recognize where that buyer is in their decision-making process. If the buyer wants all this information from you and a proposal and wants you to jump through all these hoops, but they're not able to answer simple questions like, why is this a priority for you right now? Or who else is involved in this decision? You got to pull the ripcord as fast as you can as a sales force. But again, CMOs that are listening to this, marketers that are listening to this, your sales force likely is not schooled on this science. They're likely not able to identify when they're getting shopped. And as a result, they waste an inordinate amount of time talking to a small percentage of the leads that look like they're good, but in reality they have no probability of ever buying from you, when they could be spending that equivalent amount of time going and using the other leads that are earlier in their buying process and using those as clues to ferret out where the real opportunity exists, where you get to shape the buying vision. It's a very, very different skill set, and the average salesperson on the street, like I mentioned before, that's our mission, is the average salesperson out there doing B2B who is recipient of marketing leads is not as skilled at these skills. So if you could go to the next slide, Kristen. Mark, go ahead.
Yes, let me interrupt. So this is interesting, Steve. I mean, what I'm basically hearing you say at a very high level is that it's okay to have a model. It's okay to put in place a methodology and an approach for top-of-the-funnel sales outreach and establishing connection with prospects, but at the end of the day, there needs to be some level of coaching and mentoring so sales reps have the ability to establish a more personal connection rather than creating kind of this adversarial feel of a discussion, right? Like I'm just going to hit you with 6 or 7 questions going down my list because I'm treating you like everyone else. Because that's not how prospects want to be treated. They want to be treated as special. So let me ask you this question. So this is all well and good, and I love it when people share best practices. Do you have an example of any of these best practices put in place by either one of your clients or any organization that you're familiar with and some of the outcomes of their activity?
Yeah, I'll share one with you that jumps off the top of my head, but this is a story that's repeated in many organizations. I'm going to share Concur, that they actually just acquired by SAP out of Seattle, expense management software company. But it's a story that's been repeated at Oracle Marketing Cloud, formerly Eloqua, which is a client of this. Believe it or not, they produce tons of leads, as well as F5 Networks. And it's a story about a sales force. In this case at Concur, they have about 40 account development reps that are the recipients of marketing leads, and their job is to nurture those leads, to ferret out the opportunities, and then once they have a fully fledged opportunity, to pass that opportunity to the sales force. There was an email I received about 3 weeks ago. The original training program we did with them was in January of 2014. I got an email a few weeks ago from one of the participants who said, do you remember that appointment we got with one of the 5 largest accounting firms in the world? Oh yeah, how could I forget? They literally got a meeting with the CFO of one of the 5 biggest accounting firms in the world, who had previously MQL'd but was unresponsive, had been unresponsive even though they had been interacting with the Concur content. He said, oh, by the way, that appointment we got closed for $760,000. That is one appointment that closed for one deal and one training class. Their averages across the board have gone up, but when you hear of that type of a success, it's really remarkable. Very similar story at Oracle Marketing Cloud. They have now about 40 people doing sales development worldwide. And again, they produce more leads, more inbound leads than anybody else in the universe. Show me someone who's better at marketing in the top of the funnel than Eloqua, right? I mean, give me a break. They created the category, and they've been working with us for the last 5 or 6 years. Again, skilling that sales team on how to use these leads as clues and really identify the opportunities rather than just simply in the factory ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk processing those leads.
Okay, awesome. Well, I've already gotten 2 questions in from our guests, so let me just hit you with one more question before we go to some audience Q&A. And you've kind of alluded to this a couple of times during your overview that, you know, one of the things that marketers find frustrating is, wow, they put in place these programs, they identify some leads, they hand them over to sales, and then they sit there and they wonder, what the heck happened next? Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for any of the marketers who are here on the phone today about what they can do to be a little bit more active in helping their sales teams improve execution at the top of the funnel?
Yeah, you know, they need to start monitoring some metrics that they're probably not looking at. The marketers that I'm talking to, I'm thinking of a CMO locally in the DC area at a very fast-growing SaaS company. They've got a sales team of about 50, 60 right now with about 20 lead qualification reps. And I asked this CMO, and by the way, she's didn't previously have the lead qualification function, but she's taking it on. And you're seeing that. Nobody knows what to do with lead qual. They put it in marketing and put it in sales. It goes back and forth. And she said, what should I be looking at? I said, what do you see now? She said, dials, the emails that are sent, and then the opportunities that are created. And I'm going, you're flying the plane blind. Think of all of what happens between the high-level activity of emails and dials all the way until the point where there's a qualified opportunity. There's a lot of stuff happening. Now, in our vernacular, we call it the unexpected sales call, which could be an interaction, a worthwhile, meaningful conversation or interaction over email, phone, social, or at an event that then turns into a scheduled interaction. So an unexpected sales call becomes an expected sales call, which then becomes an opportunity. But she didn't have those 2 metrics in the middle. She was missing those sandwich middle metrics, which gives you all the data. Because if someone's struggling on that team, and you go, why are they struggling? Your inclination is to say, just go make more calls. Just go send more emails. But that might not be the problem at all. It might be that the calls and emails that they're sending suck. They're horrible. And if you don't have any understanding for the conversion rate of those activities to those unexpected sales calls to those expected sales calls, you're flying the plane blind. And the number of opportunities that are coming out the tail end it's just happenstance. I mean, it's just luck. It has nothing to do with your ability to manage those activities.
Great. All right, so we've got 2 questions here from our audience, and these are actually really good ones. The first one that we've got, so let me read it exactly as it's been written here. Steve, what metrics should a marketer think about when it comes to lead conversion?
Yep. So it's those metrics I just said a minute ago. So it's the unexpected sales call, which I'm going to call anytime there is an interaction with a prospect or a lead that is not expecting to hear from you. You need to measure that. If you're a marketer, you need to measure that. And then the second thing is, once we measure that, we have to measure the expected sales call, aka the scheduled appointments, which then will lead to an opportunity being created. Because most CMOs have visibility into when that opportunity is created, but they're missing those middle pieces.
All right, so second question, and this is a really good one, and this is one that I've heard all the time. So again, I'm assuming this is going to be from one of the marketers that we've got here as a guest this morning. So how do marketers deal with the quantity of the leads they're passing to sales teams versus the quality of the outreach that's made?
Yeah, and it gets back to the whole factory example. Don't get me wrong. Some percentage of the leads that are being produced just need to be processed. Like, you just have to call them and email them and do your 2-point or your 4-point contact plan for the SLA between sales and marketing and be done with it and move on. Don't get me wrong, that has to happen, right? It's smart to do that. However, once you start to identify the 10% of the accounts within that lead pool where you go, geez, these are exactly the right kinds of accounts. And boy, look at that. 4 different people watched the same webinar from 2 different business units. It starts to give you clues of what's happening within that company, what might be changing within that company. For those, you want to put them on a significantly greater contact plan. You'd be making a huge mistake just to do your lame email, voicemail, walk away. Instead, what you're probably going to want to do is connect with those people on LinkedIn if you know how to do it the right way, so they'll accept those connections. And once you do that, have a much better understanding of ferreting out the org chart in the organization and identifying the right contacts who have the right roles, and then engaging with those people. So a tier A, tier B, tier C, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type of a plan is going to be much more effective when you're dealing with quality versus quantity. Make sure that you give quality the attention it deserves while still getting through the quantity just to fulfill the obligation that you have for the service level agreement.
All right, Steve, I think we got time for one more quick one. This one just came in, and I'm going to assume this is from a salesperson, someone actually who works in sales development, which is something that you mentioned earlier in the presentation. So it says, Steve, I'm in sales development. What are some trends around people in my position that I can think about rather than just passing leads on to high quota sales reps? What else can I do?
Sales development, you hear this kind of lame term, smarketer, which I just think is so goofy, but the reality is that it is kind of true. Sales development reps have to think a little bit like marketers and then think a little bit like salespeople. And what you tend to see is culturally, sales development is more aligned with sales, meaning sales development reps are eventually they would prefer to be in sales than in marketing. It seems like it's roughly 2/3 or 3/4 of sales development reps eventually want to carry a quota and close lots of business and make a ton of money like the salespeople are. And then the other ones want to go to marketing. I would encourage sales development reps to develop close relationships with the marketers, because marketers have been approaching this problem of the top of the funnel as a science for much longer. But again, for marketers, the science ends with the MQL. And what I'm saying is the science should not end with the MQL. The science doesn't really end until the deal is closed. There is a science to taking MQLs and taking them to SQLs, and there's also a science to taking those SQLs through to close and understanding that buyer's journey. So as a sales development rep, what you need to do is be much more closely aligned with marketing, spend time with marketing, understand what the heck marketing does, and you're going to find application for your job all over the place. But you have to just be prepared that marketers are very different. They think very differently than sales people do and sales professionals do, people do. So speak the language of the marketers, learn how to do that, and understand how to do this sort of A/B testing that the marketers do, and then apply that in the sales development function.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time today. Our guests can learn more about you and Vorsight BP by visiting your website at www.vorsightbp.com. www.modernmarketing.com. And then just a reminder for everyone, we will be sending you a copy of today's presentation and a replay by email. Of course, you are also welcome to download it at no cost by visiting www.modernmarketingtoday.com and looking at the Resource Center. What you'll also find in the Resource Center on that site is a whole bunch of other presentations and replays from the series of webinars we've been producing over the past year. So again, Steve, thank you very much. I will wish everyone a wonderful day and a super, super, super afternoon. Take care.
Thanks, Mark.